Hope. Hope is, of course, what drives us all. Hope that our efforts will stop progression of the disease, restore all function lost to MS, and end MS forever. Now to share their story of MS, please welcome veteran walker Susan Cohn-Child and veteran crew member Andrew Child. Susan is a member of the steering committee, and Andrew, you know, from the hundreds and indeed thousands of photos taken along the route. Please welcome Susan and Andrew.
Well, there are a lot of you out there. Before we start, I'd just like to thank Dr. Attell for setting the bar really, really high, and we appreciate that.
I was going to say, I was hoping for a slideshow tonight. Wiser opinions prevailed.
13 years ago, with a knot in my stomach, I stood up and talked to 1,000 walkers before beginning that first MS Challenge walk in Plymouth, heading to Cape Cod by boat. My husband Andrew wasn't there to hear me speak, as he was home then with our then 1- and 6-year-old sons, but he and the boys have been at each challenge walk since then, sharing this amazing experience together, just as we share the experience of living with MS. As many of you know, the person who has MS is not the only person who lives with MS. This is our story, unique to us, though some of you may hear little snippets that may resonate with your own.
So we were in our late 20s, which might have been a few years ago. And we were basically a couple of type A yuppies. We were focused on our careers when Susan's first MS flare-up occurred, and we were told that MS was one of the possibilities that was under consideration, and began the testing that would ultimately result in the diagnosis some 10 months later. During those long 10 months of testing, we knew that MS was a possibility, but really didn't consider it likely. There was a serious amount of denial going on throughout the entire part of that process. When we did talk about the possibility, which we try not to, I don't think, very often, we began referring to MS using one of our favorite travel phrases. You know, at the start of every flight, the flight attendants kind of stand up and they do this with a seatbelt. Right? And they teach you how to, buckle your seatbelt, they teach you how to open up the emergency door, they teach you how to run screaming from the airplane, right? Well, our favorite part of that has always been the part where they talk about the unlikely event of a water landing. And it's so serene, right? The unlikely event of a water landing. And I think we like that for two reasons. The first is that if you think about what a water landing really is, it's this slick way of sort of nicely saying, yeah, it's a crash in the ocean, okay? But they make it sound nice. It's like, oh, water landing. Like, well, I want the trip to the Bahamas, but I'm not going to take the cruise ship. I'm going to go for the water landing. It costs a little more, but it's totally worth it. So it sounds nice, but it's really not. So it felt like, instead of talking about MS, because that was scary, we'd just talk about the water landing. And the other part we liked about that is it's unlikely. And they always talk about the unlikely event of the water landing. And they make it sound so utterly improbable. Like, water landings might happen to somebody else, but definitely not happening on this flight. Definitely not happening to us. Definitely not going to interrupt the beverage service cart, which is home board. And so, of course, it seemed just incredibly remote and almost impossible to happen. Almost. I lost my place because I totally went off the. I totally went off of the script.
That's why you lost.
But that's
your
okay.
spot.
Yeah, I should read it next time.
I circled his part for him. Just saying.
It's true.
We both did write it. Just so you know, I just did the circle.
Yeah. It's your turn now.
Thank you. But of course, the diagnosis did come, and with it a frightening uncertainty about our future that has forever changed our lives and the lives of our family. No one can prepare you for an MS diagnosis. It is life-altering. It doesn't matter if you have invisible symptoms or if the symptoms are right out there in the open for everyone to see. The uncertainty of what might happen tomorrow is always there, and that uncertainty seems endless. I remember wondering, how is this disease going to impact our lives? Would I have a mild or severe case? Would I be able to continue working? Would I be able to have children? Would it impact my friends and how my colleagues and my family treated me? Would it shorten my life? Would it ruin my marriage? You see, the very few people that I knew who had MS had it bad, and one had died from complications of the disease. In the coming years, I would learn much more about MS and meet so many people living with it. But at that time, my knowledge was so limited. Along with the uncertainty was an inability to really communicate what was happening to my body. How do you explain that half your body is numb, but if you touch it, it's really, really painful? What words could I use to describe the zapping feeling up and down my spine, which some of you may be familiar with? I didn't have a vocabulary to express what was happening to my body and what the symptoms were. As the days and weeks passed, we learned more about MS and the range between relapsing and remitting chronic progressive disease courses. We added new words to our vocabulary that allowed us to better communicate what was happening to my body when I was symptomatic. We exchanged books and pamphlets on MS, from the MS Society, by the way, with our wonderfully supportive family and friends, and even in my office, a few of the need-to-know people. And we slowly adjusted to this monumental change in our lives. We learned that even the best doctors have different opinions as to what the best treatments are, but at least there were some treatments, and we were really fortunate to have choices.
I think one of our big realizations early on was that you can't control the disease, but you can control, I think, how you react to it. And so we made four big decisions. The first one was we decided that even though we were kind of type A yuppies, that instead of living to work, we would turn it around and work to live. We basically decided that we would put our relationship first, not kind of work constantly, and I think we've been happy with that pretty much ever since. Yeah? Okay. So, I mean, it's had an impact on the bank account, but I think we're better people for it. And it's our decision. I don't think everybody would make that same decision, but I think it's worked well for us. The second decision is that Susan really wanted to travel to Italy, and this felt like kind of a quick sort of a small thing. I think the feeling was, we don't know what the future looks like, let's take a trip to Italy. And of course, being like 20-something and having no money at all, it was a big splurge, but we made it work. But I think what it did is it made us kind of think a little bit and think about doing fun stuff and doing things like traveling. And ever since then, we've tried to take one nice trip with our family every single year. And I think the logic for us goes like this. It's that we don't know what the future is going to hold, so a good trip today beats the perfect trip sometime down the road. And that's been good. It's been fun too.
Later on, when Andrew's not around, I can tell you about how on one of those trips he filled our rental car with gasoline.
Most expensive tank of gas.
Those cars don't take gasoline in Italy, just saying. Anyway, that's for later. We decided to start a family and had our first child 14 months after the diagnosis. Many of you have had, I hope, the pleasure of meeting our boys, Alex and Zach. Who have grown up volunteering at the Challenge Walk, first as the Lemonade Boys, then as walkers and photographers. Alex is missing his first Challenge Walk in 12 years because he started college last week. Zach is here with us again.
He had some great pictures the last 2 nights.
And in case you're wondering, Zach, we still believe that having children was the best decision we made. We decided to work with the National MS Society and not to hide my MS. Working with an NMSS, that's in my notes, was an easy decision. Being open about the diagnosis was a bit more challenging at first. It stopped being more difficult the first time I shared my MS, wondering at that time with someone at my office who was not in a need-to-know position. I remember feeling a little bit of regret and wondering, why did I share that information? That was until a few weeks later when that individual walked into my office and said, "My cousin was just diagnosed with MS. My family is freaking out." And I told them about you, how I have this colleague who's working full-time, just back from maternity leave, and is doing well. And that was their first experience hearing about someone, much like my own experience, of someone with MS who wasn't necessarily the worst case scenario. There's a range. And I realized then that that's why I shared it. I didn't know at the time. And that situation has repeated itself a number of times since then, where I've been open about my MS in a situation where I think, why? Why did I say anything? And then within a few weeks, I get a phone call or an email, and I'm always so grateful that I've spoken out. That family and those families that I've talked with have been able to get a look at MS that I didn't have when I was diagnosed. It's an amazing feeling to be able to do something positive for other people just because I was dealt the same bad hand they were, making lemonade from the lemons we are dealt.
That's my turn. It's circled. So living with MS in our family, it has not always been easy. And I have a little thing in here where in parentheses about talking about fatigue, but I'll just say this. When you have a person with chronic fatigue who also refuses to take naps because she has too much to do. Anyway, yeah, so you gotta work with it, right?
That seems reasonable to me.
Yeah, but on the whole, we realize we've been very, very fortunate. Disease-modifying medications, God, that's hard to say, became available just before Susan's diagnosis, and they've worked well for her. That being said, we're always aware that there's no guarantee for the future. This is where I was going to interrupt, but I don't have to because it's my part, so I can just keep talking. And so what I was going to say is this, which is earlier when we were listening to the psychological impact of MS on families. One of the things that reminded me was I remember when you first started taking medication was beta serum back in the day. And of course, we had no idea what we were doing. We had, gotten the instructions and we took the package of stuff out and there were the instructions. And the instructions had like 6 or 7 pages of how to give a shot. It was a subcutaneous shot and it was pretty straightforward. And then like 20 pages of side effects, right? And so we read the side effects and I'm reading the small print and I'm looking at it and I'm going, okay, so there's lack of sleep, and there's dry mouth, and there's depression, and there's lack of ability to concentrate. And I got like that far through the list, and I was like, oh crap, I don't even have MS. I got like half of it. and I mean, but that's true, right? I mean, I think it really ripples through in that kind of a way, and I think it was less having to do with the medicine, and more having to do with sort of psychologically getting over, dealing with having to take the medicine for the disease that you don't like to talk about anyway. So I'm back on script now. In spite of the difficulties, we've benefited in some really unexpected ways. We're still satisfied with the decisions we made back in 1995. And we feel like we're happier, perhaps better adjusted, and maybe even better people for having had to deal with MS. And we're especially grateful for the people that we met along the way. And that's you guys. Thank you. That'll be in the slideshow.
We are here to tell you that unlikely water landings can be survivable. They are not all the same, of course, but much remains in our control, even when things seem to be spinning out of control. Working to end MS is one of the things that is within our control. We don't know how long it will take or how much it will cost, but it will happen. If you're serious about ending MS, and you wouldn't be here if you weren't, you need to be in this for the long haul. Hopefully not too long, but the long haul, longer than 50 miles this year. We are definitely in it, and we hope you are too.